Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here on Face the State. I'm Tracy Townsend. We are closely watching the fallout from the widespread intentional AEP outages. On Tuesday, AEP cut power to 120,000 customers across the state of Ohio. Company leaders say they had to do this because storms on Monday knocked down power lines. Then the extreme heat moved in, putting a strain on the power grids. The Ohio Consumers Council is calling for the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio to investigate AEP's actions. The PUCO says it will do an after-action review on this case. We asked the chairperson what that means.
We'll sit down, understand hopefully a little more of the technical end of things, and make decisions as a regulator as to what, if anything, needs to be done in the future to avoid situations like this.
We also asked whether any fines or penalties might come out of this review, but she said it would be premature to say so at this time. Customers do want to know why they were removed from the grid and why they weren't given a heads up. Chief Investigative Reporter Bennett Haverly took those questions right to AEP.
What message would you have to the people out there who are frustrated, who are in the dark, who are dealing with the heat?
We're sorry. I mean, that's one thing. We're sorry. This is not something, the very last thing that we want to do is outage a customer. The very last thing we want to do. From an emergency standpoint, we're doing this to protect the integrity of the entire grid.
John Williams with AEP Ohio said it was critical that the power company forcibly remove thousands of customers from the electrical grid to prevent further damage and longer outages. The explanation we were given? That storms from Monday night damaged high-voltage transmission lines. As repair work was being done on those, the high intense heat we've experienced was creating overloads, putting stress on the system, prompting the power company to purposely cut off electricity to thousands. There was no indication of the fact when you guys took people off service, there was no heads up that that was going to happen.
There wasn't the ability to have a heads up. This was an emergency. So as other transmission lines picked up the load, added the load, what happens is the load shedding that had to occur to support those other transmission lines that are overloading, they had to be brought down, and it's an automatic grid protection, grid-enabled situation.
The state's Public Utility Commission says the call to remove customers from power came from above AEP, from the grid manager, PJM, which acts like an air traffic controller for the grid, covering 13 states, including Ohio.
They're kind of the air traffic controller of our electric grid, and so it was them, PJM, that ordered AEP Ohio to conduct these outages to protect the grid.
An AEP spokesman says it was the company's decision, but likely that they would have been directed by PJM to act had they done nothing.
We do have this under control, and we're going to solve this problem, and we're going to solve it here in the next few days.
And again, that was Bennett Haverly reporting. Democrats are calling for accountability over these planned outages. And the Franklin County House Democrats sent a letter to the president of AEP saying they want answers about how they decided whose power got cut and why the outages lasted so long. An Ohio lawmaker decided to take action when she learned her constituents were struggling without power. Reporter Kevin Landers followed her as she tried to provide relief to those who were too fragile to leave their homes.
We took everything from Target.
State Representative Latina Humphrey of Columbus used her power,
Lord Jesus, it's so hot,
to help her constituents suffering without power. On the hottest day of the year.
This is unacceptable. Like I said, parts of the South Side is filled with senior citizens who are bedridden, who need oxygen, who need help, and have not had power. And this is not helpful during the heat wave. We have heat waves every summer. We have summer storms every summer. And so we need to be prepared for things like these and making sure that we're investing in, the power grid or whatever the case may be, because this happens every year. And so this is not going to work.
AEP shut off power without notice to customers in portions of the city she represents when transmission lines went down during a storm Monday night.
You need to call people, send text messages like they do when they want us to pay our bill. They can do that to say, hey, it's going to be an intentional power outage at 10 p.m. Get to safety. That's the responsible thing to do.
At this senior living center off Livingston Avenue, Representative Humphrey and her crew provided more water to a building with no backup power supply in a building full of the medically fragile.
How hot is it inside?
It's hot. It's very hot. Yes, it's too hot for anybody to stay in there.
Inside the Livingston Senior Apartments, its phone system isn't working, so they're going door to door to see if residents need help.
If they're not answering the door, then we're talking to the other residents, hey, have you seen so-and-so, and checking on them.
So are you allowed to go in their rooms if they're not answering?
We don't have a key, so we don't have access to go into their homes.
As the sun bakes the air outside, those baking inside have a message for those trying to turn the power back on.
Please do everything that you can to hurry.
So what happens next? The Public Utility Commission tells 10TV it plans to conduct an after-event review with AEP and PGM, the energy regulator, to make sure outages like this don't happen again. Kevin Landers, 10TV News.
Some community members are questioning the decision to intentionally turn off power. The president of the Columbus branch of the NAACP says she wants to talk with AEP leaders.
The NAACP is demanding answers to questions that we have from AEP about the outages. We have several questions. Who determined what areas would be without electricity? What's the protocol for determining what areas go without electricity? And another thing, what's the process that they're using? They need to come out and share with the community protocols, why they selected some communities and not others. The urban community and Central City are without electricity, and that's problematic. Yet we've got buildings downtown that have lights on. We demand answers. We believe that there may be some biases within AEP because the percentage of people that are low income are on the percentage of income payment plan. And maybe that's a bias that they have because they pay their bills based on their income. So we demand answers to those questions very quickly, and they need to come to the community and share with us what are next plans.
Now, for anyone on SNAP benefits who lost a refrigerator full of food during this outage, you can try to get the food replaced. You do need to have lost power for at least 4 hours. You'll have to fill out a form within 10 days, and then you submit it to the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. We posted a link to that form at 10tv.com/featured links. This week, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine unveiled his $3.5 billion state budget. The biggest winner in the budget, Intel. Ohio was given the semiconductor company $2 billion in tax incentives. Intel is planning to invest $20 billion in building 2 semiconductor fabrication plants in western Lincoln County. Ohio's state parks were another big winner, $515 million allocated for dams, trails, and cabin improvements. And then the state will provide $100 million for school security in K through 12 and another $5 million for colleges and universities. The governor outlined what schools could use that money for.
School radio systems, GPS tracking on student transport vehicles, exterior lights, notification systems, security training, and door locking systems, and more.
All right, let's take a closer look at the money that will go to Intel. State leaders say attracting the tech company to the Buckeye State wouldn't have happened without nearly $2 billion in tax incentives. Intel guarantees to hire 3,000 people at its plant in western Lincoln County, but it's not clear where they are going to find those employees. Kevin Landers took those questions to the governor.
It's not entirely clear how many Intel employees plan to be hired from the state of Ohio. According to the DeWine administration, it's not clear either because it was never stipulated in the agreement.
Intel tells us that they have Ohio residents, used to be Ohio residents who work at Intel, and they're dying to come back.
If an Intel employee from Arizona moves to Ohio, Are they just as much an Ohioan as someone already here?
Everybody who works at the plant will be an Ohioan.
When Intel announced it planned to hire 3,000 people, many believed that meant a majority would come from Ohio. The state is defining it this way.
Intel will hire every Ohioan who has the skills to work there. And we'll be bringing new Ohioans here to be part of that manufacturing facility as well.
Ohio is giving nearly $2 billion in tax breaks to Intel, which helped incentivize the chip maker to move here, along with the companies it plans to attract here.
That was part of the agreement that all states were competing for to win, because it's not just Intel, it's the companies that we will bring with them that will create the economic momentum for a generation.
Intel's move is not welcome to those who live nearby. They worry about the impacts on well water and their home values. I asked Governor DeWine about those concerns.
So look, I understand people's concerns. The unknown is always tough, and I fully understand that. And if I was out there, I would have questions. What we're trying to do is to make sure that we're transparent. Intel, as we've talked to Intel, they agree with us that the most important thing they can be now is transparent.
Including impacts to the environment.
We are committed. I think everyone, Intel is committed, to be an environmentally friendly neighbor.
Here's a look at some of the tax incentives Ohio is giving Intel. $300 million to build a water reclamation facility, another $100 million for local wastewater upgrades, and about $200 million to widen state and local roads. Reporting from the State House, Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
This week, Governor DeWine signed a bill updating the state's burial and cremation laws. This is a bill we've been closely following. Our reporting on a man charged with operating as an unlicensed funeral director led to an amendment which now gives the State Board of Embalmers and Funeral Directors the power to investigate and prosecute people who provide unlicensed funeral directing or operate funeral homes without a license. Lawmakers say they hope this will close the loophole preventing grieving families from being taken advantage of. A bill to give veterans across the country more access to VA health care is expected to become law. The U.S. Senate passed the PACT Act. The bill is in honor of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, an Ohioan who was stationed near burned fields. The goal of it is to get health care services for veterans who have suffered from toxic exposure. It also strengthens federal research on the issue. Governor DeWine signed a controversial gun bill into law. The same day, another took effect. We're asking him why it's becoming easier for Ohioans to carry guns after recent shootings. Welcome back. Ohio is officially a constitutional carry state. That means people are now allowed to carry a concealed firearm without a license. Therefore, without the 8 hours of training or background check required to get the permit, you still have to be at least 21 years old and eligible to carry a gun. This week, Governor Mike DeWine signed House Bill 99. It allows educators to carry a firearm in a school zone if they have a CCW. It's up to individual school boards to decide if they want this in their respective districts. Armed teachers need 24 hours of training and 8 hours every year. These measures are becoming law after recent mass shootings in Buffalo, New York and Uvalde, Texas. It's also happening as the U.S. Senate announced a measure that would address mental health and create more restrictions on who has access to guns. Chief investigative reporter Bennett Haberly asked Governor Mike DeWine why he decided to make these changes.
I'm wondering if it's concerning to you that what we're doing here is making access to guns easier rather than harder, and that seems incongruent with what the U.S. Senate's poised to do.
Well, look, I don't want to quarrel with you, but first of all, we don't have a bill yet from them. We have a general idea. It doesn't look like it's gun control. There's a great deal of emphasis put in on mental health. I would simply say that, the things that they have outlined, if you're asking what my reaction is to it, we are always open to help in these areas. These are areas that we are already moving on and have been moving on, particularly in the area of mental health. If they want to send additional money in here, for mental health, that's fine.
Governor Mike DeWine's news conference was filled with questions about the signing of House Bill 99, a law that will allow local school districts the option to decide whether it should arm teachers. The legislation also reduces the number of required training hours, down from 700 to 24, with additional 8 hours required annually. The governor reiterated, arming teachers with a gun is an option, not a requirement.
First of all, schools are not required to do it. Second, teachers are not required to do it. We have had requests from schools to allow this to be done. There's also some, let me say, guessing that guns are already in schools. And look, we want to provide a regular mechanism to get training.
DeWine said the debate and discussion surrounding this preceded the most recent deadly school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. DeWine said his preference would have been to place additional resources with school resource officers. Many questions still remain about this legislation, including how many school districts will explore the option and how the weapons will be stored. DeWine said this is about not denying school districts options they think they might need.
Is there data that would suggest that this type of training, the arming of teachers or other staff, would have quelled school shootings?
I don't think there's any data on a lot of things. What we're dealing with is anecdotally what we've seen in regard to school shootings, and the state of the understanding of school shootings has evolved and will continue to evolve in every single case. Every case is different.
And that was 10 Investigates' Bennett Haberly reporting. 5 school districts provided testimony in support of this bill. The state teachers union opposed it, saying its members, quote, do not want to be in the dual role of educating students and serving as armed security guards, end quote. Democratic gubernatorial nominee Nan Whaley is also against the signing of House Bill 99. She said she gets calls from Ohioans for the governor to do something on gun violence and that they've been ignored.
In the weeks after, it seemed like Mike DeWine had heard them. He introduced real legislation that was a good first step to reduce gun violence, but we all know what happened next. He did what too many politicians do. He said all the right things when it was convenient, and then he caved.
And again, it is up to individual school districts to implement this law if they choose to do that. We did check with West Liberty Salem schools, where there was a school shooting in 2017 at the high school. 2 students were shot. Since then, the district has made several changes, but one thing they decided not to do was arm teachers. And that policy has not changed even after this particular law was passed.
We're probably still fairly consistent with the thought that we feel like a teacher carrying a gun in school isn't as good as having, say, a school resource officer.
Having a school resource officer in the building is one of the changes the district made after that shooting in 2017. Columbus City Schools also announced that it will not be arming teachers in its schools. In a statement, the Board of Education said in part, quote, arming teachers is not a solution to gun violence. Solving the problem of gun violence requires a community solution. Again, that's from the state's largest school district, the Columbus City Schools. The city of Dublin is keeping a ban on fireworks in place. At City Council there this week, members voted to approve a resolution. The vote was necessary after the state legislature approved House Bill 172, which allows consumer-grade fireworks to be set off on certain holidays. It takes effect on July 1st. Other cities have done the same thing, including the city of Columbus and Worthington. COVID-19, monkeypox, and measles. Ohio is seeing all of these infectious diseases right now. After the break, local medical experts tell you what you need to know about each one. Ohio's healthcare providers are ready to get the ball rolling on COVID-19 vaccines for children.
Ohio's enrolled vaccine providers have begun placing orders for these vaccines, and the first deliveries are expected on Monday. Local health departments and federally qualified health centers are in that mix.
Earlier this week, the Food and Drug Administration voted to recommend the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine for children under the age of 5. This week, the Ohio Department of Health announced that monkeypox has possibly made it to the state. They say they've identified a probable case of monkeypox in a man living here. 10 TV's Olivia Eugenio explains what you need to know.
The Ohio Department of Health has identified a probable case of monkeypox infection in an adult male residing in Ohio based on preliminary testing at the Ohio Department of Health's laboratory.
Dr. Bruce Vanderhoff says they are waiting for confirmation from the CDC if this is an actual case of monkeypox. But for moms like Sarah Wilkins, who has 3 kids, is she concerned?
In terms of a threat to myself, to my family, I have parents who are here. It's not something that's turning all the lights on the dashboard for me.
And it doesn't for Dr. Joseph Castaldo at Ohio Health either.
It's very, very unlikely at this time that monkeypox really has any kind of threat for anybody in the public.
Dr. Castaldo says it is spread through close, intimate contact.
This virus is nowhere near as transmissible or contagious as COVID-19. To acquire monkeypox from somebody, you really have to have direct contact with body fluids or sores that somebody has had for a prolonged period of time.
He says most cases have been confirmed in men who have had sexual contact with other men and is not really spread through the respiratory system.
And we're really talking hours of close, intimate contact with somebody to get it from a respiratory droplet.
Okay, take a look at your screen. We have the symptoms of monkeypox to look out for: high fever, headache, and then 2 or 3 days after that, sores that could look like blisters. Dr. Castaldo says the treatment is supportive care, which means helping with the symptoms. It clears up in 3 to 4 weeks. All right, measles is in Ohio for the first time since 2019. Right now, a 17-month-old baby and her family are isolating at home in Franklin County after she apparently picked up the virus while they were traveling. Columbus Public Health says the baby was not vaccinated. Doctors recommend children get the first shot against measles when they turn 1. Measles is extremely contagious. It spreads through coughing and sneezing. Infectious disease specialist Dr. Castaldo, who again is with Ohio Health, says if you're vaccinated, you don't need to worry. But what about parents who have babies who are just too little to get that vaccine?
Measles, along with any other viruses, there is a layer of protection that the baby gets from the mother's antibodies when they're born.
Our state experienced a measles outbreak in 2014 with 382 confirmed cases. Since then, there was a case in 2015 and another in 2017 and 2019. Columbus Pride celebrations are wrapping up for the weekend, but lawmakers aren't done acknowledging Pride Month. We talked with Senator Nikki Antonio, who says she's ready to get to work when it comes to protecting LGBTQ plus Ohioans. It's why she says she's hoping to pass the Ohio Fairness Act.
What the business community knows is that LGBTQ equality is good for business and good for the financial bottom line for the state of Ohio. That's why it's important to pass the Fairness Act to let people know that by passing the Fairness Act, all people are welcome to come to the state of Ohio.
And the senator says she's prepared to push for more hearings this fall. If passed, the Ohio Fairness Act would ban discrimination based on a person's sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. Now, Senator Antonio is sending a message of hope to the LGBTQ plus community.
We have a lot to be proud of. Sometimes just surviving and thriving is a celebration during Pride for folks who clearly are marginalized, are demonized sometimes through no fault of their own. And so I think in some ways, it's probably the best time to deal with these kinds of issues.
We certainly thank you for joining us here on Face the State this Sunday, and we wish you a great week.